You know what? Let's do this because this is a follow-up of the video I just put out about DC taking the crown from Marvel potentially. And I had a couple of people leaving snide comments here and there about, I'll never buy a DC book ever. There was one guy in particular clearly didn't bother to even. He just hate clicked. He hate commented on the title alone. But I found a better article that kind of goes into this, and I want to dig into this. This is actually from Movie Pilot, ironically. So this quote that Jim Lee may or may not have said started the conversation, and noting that maybe Jim Lee didn't say it, that's kind of what he's hinting at on Twitter, at least the last that I've seen. We have to stop the collapse of the comic book industry. This article is called DC Comics says the comic book industry is on the brink of collapse and they have a plan to save it. Now, on its face, that seems like a kind of arrogant thing to say. It's almost Marvel at its height of arrogance right now. But there seems to be something going on with the comic book insiders, the comic book industry insiders. They're trying to, fans, it's all over the internet. We're all concerned about the industry. And they're like, no, nothing to see here. It's fine. And even when this quote is attributed to them, I see a lot of backtracking, and I didn't say this, and anyway. But the article goes on to say it's since been hotly debated, with other reports attributing the quote to Lee's fellow publisher Dan Didio. Whoever said it, though, the quote is deeply disturbing. So it's true. The quote it needs to be said. So the article says the comic book market isn't in good shape. Sales are dropping, and market leader Marvel is repeating short-term sales strategies that caused the 90s comic book bubble to burst. They're preaching. Flagging comic book sales are at the heart of the paradox of San Diego Comic-Con 2017. Superheroes have never been more popular, and yet the comic book industry is in trouble. We can fix it. It can be fixed. Unusually, DC Comics publishers Jim Lee and Dan Didio were absolutely open about the challenges they faced with today. So there's conflicting reports about this. I guess they did. I wasn't there, so I haven't seen this. If you guys know of any place on YouTube, maybe I'll do a search later to try to find it. But if you have a video of this conversation, put it in the comment section for me and for anybody else who wants to look at it. I'll pin it to the top if any of you guys can find something that's like good and you can actually hear the audio. They also talked at length about just how they aim to turn the market around. The success of DC Rebirth. Spearheaded by Jeff Johns, the DC Rebirth initiative has been a tremendous success. Didio openly admitted that while the company's previous New 52 relaunch had allowed them to re-examine characters and try new things, they realized that something had been lost along the way. Aha. Yes, indeed. Although sales are beginning to falter a little, the fact that they're still strong a full year into the 2-year arc is impressive. What's more, SDCC has seen DC Comics, way too many SDCCCs, DCs, up the ante, revealing details of Jeff Johns' Doomsday Clock event, as teased all the way back in last year's DC Universe Rebirth #1. This will bring the characters of Alan Moore's Watchmen into contact with the main DC Universe. Speaking, I'm surprised, side note, I'm surprised that took that long. Everybody is just marveling at this being done. I'm like, I would have expected this to have been done in the 90s when the gimmick was the thing. But I guess the Watchmen was still too, I don't know. Like I said, I'm shocked that it took this long. Speaking at another panel, Jeff Johns teased that he'll be bringing Lex Luthor and Ozymandias? Forgive me. He's on the crazy train. The smartest men in their respective comic book universes face to face. He has also confirmed the long-standing fan theory that Dr. Manhattan is the force behind Rebirth. As comic book fans noted when John's DC Universe Rebirth was first published, the whole arc is in part a repudiation of everything comics has been doing for the last couple of decades. It rejects the pessimism and darkness that was in vogue in the aftermath of Alan Moore's Watchmen, and positioning the characters of Watchmen as the villains who've stolen life and hope from the DC Universe is a glorious meta-narrative. More and more reasons for me to get on board with DC, I got to admit. I'm so glad that people have finally caught on to this. And you know what? I think it's because of the movies. I think that's where everybody realized it. Everybody's trying to go darker. And I'm like, you can't do that with everything. It only works for certain properties. The comic book industry is in a strange place. As Didio noted, comic books have become the second or third way to meet characters like Batman and Superman, and we want to change that. Thank God. That's going to mean increasing the profile of the comics, focusing in on marketing, and changing strategies. DC isn't content to just coast off the back of their box office success. They want the comic book publisher to stand on its own 2 feet. As a result, DC is shifting its focus. Lee talked about the importance of what he called the evergreen stories, the tales that never grow old, like Alan Moore's Watchmen and Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, which are both the dark ones, but the challenge facing DC is a simple one. How can they make the next generation of evergreen stories that don't require in-depth knowledge of superhero continuity, but that stand the test of time and transform the genre? Part of it is getting key writers on board. The only one Lee named in the panel was Neil Gaiman. Lee explained that they want to give their creators a challenge to tell the best Superman story, the best Batman story, the best Justice League story. See, we've been through this before, but it just bears repeating. It dovetails perfectly with comments legendary Batman writer Scott Snyder has been making in recent months. He's been talking about stepping aside from All-Star Batman in order to participate in a new venture one DC clearly hopes will transform the market. This is Scott Snyder. DC approached me and said, how would you like to take some of the stuff that you were working on with Sean Murphy and do it in a new prestige format? Instead of doing it monthly, why not do it in this format that would allow for it to be bigger stage, both for Sean artistically and to package the story in a new way, and then allow every subsequent story that I was going to do with Paul Pope, with Afua, A-F-U-A. Anybody know how to pronounce that? With Lee Bermejo, be done in this format that really foregrounds the art, different paper size, different cut, the whole thing. And that way, it seemed obvious and a perfect solution. Instead of having them work month to month on a normal size conventional comic, we could be some of the first people to try diving in this new lane for DC. I'm really, really thrilled about it. We'll see. I'm one of those I'll wait and see on this one. Didio describes this as a mature reader's line. You don't have vertigo anymore? One inspired by graphic novels that allow the art to breathe. This appears to be European-style albums, closer to 3 issues worth of material rather than just the one at a time. These will get into the bookstores faster than your typical graphic novels, helping with cash flow and presenting a real alternative to the direct market. Newsprint, baby. But anyway, if they're thinking outside the box, that's good. Some of these ideas are going to stick. So this next part of the article says, take a deep breath, a different approach to diversity and a growing emphasis on artists. See, you could almost, any of you guys want to start a comic company? I mean, you could literally, because it seems like DC is doing, look at what Marvel is doing, write it all down, and then do the opposite. Seriously, because this is what they're doing. Everything that Marvel's doing, for the most part, DC is doing the opposite, and it's succeeding. Marvel is actually so bad at this right now, money on the table, you could start a comic company, and you could succeed in it just by doing the opposite of what Marvel does. So the article goes on to say, since April this year, DC has been teasing the importance of a new line that they call Dark Matter. Introducing a whole swath of new characters and featuring top talent like Jim Lee, John Romita Jr., Greg Capullo, and Andy Kubert, the line will focus on as much on the artists as on the writers. The last few years have seen comic book writers essentially become celebrities, while artists remain seemingly undervalued. In contrast, Didio stressed that the partnership between the writer and the artist will be key to the success of Dark Matter. He's got a point. Comics are a visual medium, after all, which we've said on this channel, you and I, in the comments and in the videos. The goal of Dark Matter will be to improve the diversity of the DC universe without altering the classic characters. Dun, 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 dun. If Marvel really wants to succeed, fire the dudes up top and say, copy what DC is doing right now. They've got their heads clear and they're going forward. Just follow them. It's clearly a very different approach to the one taken by Marvel, whose legacy heroes have become pretty controversial among comic book fans. The creative teams are working to recapture the energy of the early years of Marvel, or, yeah, or the launch of Image Comics, which is a great example, though Image arguably focused too much on the art and not enough on the story. They want Dark Matter to be fresh and exciting. And I'm literally reading about it, reading what they want to do and their vision behind it, and I'm excited about it. Lee, who kicks the line off working alongside James Tynion, Tynion, the fourth, on The Immortal Men, described the thrill of creating whole new characters and ideas. As Didio noted, they don't want to be a cover band that just plays the same old hits all the time. The panel gave tantalizing hints that Dark Matter will see DC embrace a different retail model in some way too. Didio called 2018 a transformative year and expressed a hope that the publisher will reach beyond the traditional direct market. Ooh. While Didio and Lee didn't explain any details, maybe we know, they made it clear that they aim to increase the number of new comic book fans and will be watching with fascination to see what approaches DC take. Yes, we will. I swear, is DC watching this channel, listening to me, and listening to you guys? No, but it'd be really cool if they were. Retailers will breathe a sigh of relief. DC is avoiding a lot of the gimmicks that created a temporary sales boost but seem to be damaging the industry. Take, for example, one of the most common, for every first issue to be supported by a wide range of variant covers, many of which have different prices to indicate their rarity. Yeah, that's annoying. While these are loved by collectors, they typically lead to the next issue's sales dropping like a stone. Worse still, DC has noted that the inflated prices actually drive casual fans away. Seriously, they get it. As a result, the publisher is literally not going to do any variants in support of the new Dark Matter line. Oh, another one! Ah! As Didio noted, all we do with that is put obstacles in the way of you buying comic books, raising prices, variant covers. We have got to stop. We can't afford this to be a dying business. Amen. While I'm sure DC will continue to use some gimmicks, their lenticular variants for the button were a tremendous success after all. They're clearly aware of the risks of going overboard. They really ought to look at their Dark Knight 3 release. They've not quite gotten away from that yet, but I digress. Some of those versions were really cool. This stands in marked contrast to Marvel, who noted the success of those lenticular variants and recently announced that their entire Marvel Legacy range later in this year will feature them. And that's about all they're going to feature. We're seeing DC and Marvel part ways, not just on pricing, but also on the use of gimmicks. It's going to be very interesting indeed to see how the industry reacts. Meanwhile, although the publisher can't afford to put all books back to the $2.99 price, they're pricing carefully. The Dark Matter books will all be cheaper than the normal titles, while some of the Dark Knight's metal books will also be at a lower price point. The last year has seen DC reverse years of decline, leaving their biggest rival Marvel struggling to catch up. I don't think Marvel knows which direction is up right now. Still, the comic book industry as a whole isn't in a good place right now. Marvel has taken one approach with their Marvel Legacy range. They're appealing to nostalgia, indulging in all the traditional gimmicks, and desperately attempting a back-to-basics meat-and-potatoes relaunch. If only that's what they were doing, and it isn't. That's why it's not going to work. Unfortunately, as long-term comic book fans will know, those are the very strategies Marvel employed in the 90s, and the comic book industry crashed. In contrast, while they're also stripping things back, DC seems to be taking a fresh approach. They're attempting to expand their range, to reach out to new markets, and to redefine the industry in a way that could well make a difference. Comic book fans all over the world can only wish them success. And then a poll at the bottom, are you excited for Dark Matter? I click yes. Well, guys, let me know in the comment section what you think about this. That was a much better article than the one I previously featured in the last video. And if this is news to you, tell me what you think about it. Are you excited like I am to see at least somebody acknowledging these problems and doing something about it? You know, post your comments down below. Let me know what you're excited about, what you're not excited about. Yeah, thoughts are welcome.